Somewhere in Orange County, Florida, behind the gates of one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in America, a man is under house arrest. An ankle monitor sits above his sock. Behind him, in his living room, sits a pool table made by Louis Vuitton. He owns two. This is Christopher Delgado. 3 years ago, he ran a company that told investors it could turn cryptocurrency into guaranteed monthly income. Retirees believed him. Teachers believed him. Nurses and firefighters believed him. Between them, they handed over $328 million, a number that would later grow to $400 million. Federal investigators would eventually trace where that money actually went. And of the hundreds of millions raised, they found that only $1.5 million, less than 0.5%, ever touched the investment he promised. This is the story of Goliath Ventures. Christopher Delgado didn't come from money. He grew up in Victorville, California, a high desert town 2 hours outside Los Angeles. His first job paid $8 an hour. He never went to college. He never held a formal title at any real corporation. What he had was a gift for talking, for making people believe in him. By his 20s, he'd built a career as a business consultant, coaching entrepreneurs on branding and marketing, despite having no credentials that would normally justify the fee. Even Delgado admits it's a fair question. Why were people paying him at all? Nobody had asked him that, until now. That gift for making people believe would become the entire foundation of what came next. In February 2019, Delgado registered a company in Florida called Gen Z Venture Firm. It started small, a handful of friends pooling money together. Then, in his words, they came to him and said, "We want to make this bigger than it is." In September 2021, the company took a new name, Goliath Ventures. On its website and in its marketing materials, Goliath described itself as, quote, "a pioneering firm specializing in blockchain development and decentralized finance strategies," end quote. The company promised access to something called liquidity pools, a real piece of cryptocurrency technology dressed up to sound like a private, exclusive opportunity for what it called qualified investors. From January 2023 onward, this was no longer a group of friends. It was a machine built to bring in money, and it worked. Here's how the pitch worked. Goliath handed investors a diagram, a flowchart showing exactly where their money would go. Step 1. Wire your funds into Goliath's bank account. Step 2. The money moves to Coinbase. Step 3. It passes through what the diagram called an, quote, encrypted ledger, end quote, a term that means almost nothing on its own, but sounds like security. Step 4. The funds land in a liquidity pool on a platform called Uniswap, generating returns from trading fees. The paperwork backing this, a joint venture agreement, usually signed personally by Delgado, promised monthly returns of 3 to 8%, guaranteed. Sometimes the agreement promised the principal itself was guaranteed too. That's an annual return of up to 48%, the kind of number that should set off alarms in anyone's head. But buried in the same contract was a single sentence that gutted all of it. The agreement stated in writing that it was not an investment product, not an investment offering, and not a security in any way whatsoever. Investors weren't shown that sentence. They were shown the diagram. Nobody found Goliath through an advertisement. They found it through someone they trusted, a friend who was already an investor and already getting paid, a colleague, a relative. That referral led to a private meeting, sometimes over dinner at an Orlando restaurant, sometimes with Delgado himself at the table. From there, the machine escalated the trust. In December 2023, Goliath hosted an investor event at the Four Seasons Resort in Orlando, professionally run, dressed up, full of people who all seemed to believe. Goliath also poured money into charitable sponsorships. One investor met Delgado for the first time, not through business, but through a charity function, and that public, philanthropic face made the whole operation feel safer than it was. Now here's what investigators found when they pulled the actual bank records. Between January 2023 and June 2025, $253 million flowed into Goliath's JP Morgan Chase account. Between May and September of 2025, another $75 million went into a Bank of America account. On top of that, $62 million was wired directly to Goliath's Coinbase wallets. Add it up and you get hundreds of millions of dollars moving through the company. Investigators traced every one of those dollars using blockchain analysis. Of all of it, every dollar raised over 3 years, only about $1.5 million ever actually reached a liquidity pool. The rest sat in ordinary bank accounts or sat as a digital dollar equivalent called USDC, doing absolutely nothing that resembled the pitch. And the online portal investors logged into, the ones showing their account growing every month? Prosecutors said those numbers, labeled monthly distribution rate and monthly distribution balance, were not connected to any real trading. Someone typed them in. Take the man investigators call Investor One from Seminole County, Florida. He was introduced to Goliath by an acquaintance who said he'd already invested $1 million and was getting paid like clockwork. Investor One started small, $10,000 in March 2023. The next month, he got a payout of about $700, 7% exactly as promised. That one payment is what hooked him. In June of that year, he signed the joint venture agreement. He went to the Four Seasons event. He met Delgado through charity work. Each experience added another layer of proof that this was real. By the end of 2024, he'd put in $720,000. Then in late 2025, the payments slowed down. Goliath blamed audits, then banking issues, then compliance reviews. In January 2026, Investor One asked for everything back, $862,000 including his returns. Goliath even sent him a message in writing, breaking down exactly how the money would come back to him month by month. It never came. When he called his bank to reverse the wires and filed a police report, someone from Goliath texted him, not to apologize, but to ask, quote, "What are you doing, man?" End quote. He has not recovered a cent. Now take Investor Two from Orange County. He met Delgado personally over dinner in July 2024. He invested $1 million at a 5% monthly rate. By December, he'd added $15 million more, at 7, then 7.5% a month. At Goliath's Christmas party that same month, Delgado stood up and announced the company had secured insurance, a fidelity bond, that would protect every investor's principal. When Investor Two asked to see the paperwork, Delgado said no. That refusal was enough to make him nervous. He asked for his money back. Delgado's response, by email, was not an apology. It accused Investor Two of, quote, taking advantage of the opportunity, end quote, and threatened to cut his return rate if he ever wanted back in. And then, Goliath paid him $7.1 million in February 2025, $10.6 million more in March, $17.7 million returned in full, plus profit. That is the engine of every Ponzi scheme in miniature. Pay the big, loud investor with the newest money coming in the door, and keep the machine looking honest, while a quieter investor asking the same question a year later gets nothing at all. To prove all of this in court, investigators didn't just take Delgado's victims at their word. They hired blockchain forensics analysts to trace every wallet Goliath ever touched. They pulled a single wire transfer, $300,000 sent to Coinbase on February 1st, 2024, and used basic accounting to show that every dollar of it came from money investors had just wired in days earlier, not from any legitimate business activity. That single transaction became one of the 2 federal charges against him. So if only $1.5 million went where it was supposed to, where did the rest go? Investigators traced at least 4 homes purchased with investor money. $3.2 million for a property in Winter Park, $1,150,000 in Kissimmee, $8.5 million for an estate in Windermere, $1,650,000 in Sanford. Beyond real estate, there were Lamborghinis and Rolls-Royces, Rolex watches, dozens of Louis Vuitton bags and wallets, custom Tiffany jewelry, corporate credit cards funding lavish holiday parties, and luxury travel. Some investor money was also funneled into a cryptocurrency fund in Dubai. Money Delgado later admitted simply, quote, became inaccessible, end quote. And the people recruiting new investors were paid extremely well for it. In Delgado's own words, our people were making an astronomical amount of money. By late 2025, the machine was running out of new money to feed itself. Withdrawal requests piled up. Goliath's explanations got vaguer and more desperate. Delgado left the country for Dubai. He says he was trying to salvage the business. But when he learned federal prosecutors had a criminal complaint ready to file against him, he came back to the United States and turned himself in. On February 24, 2026, Christopher Delgado was arrested on charges of wire fraud and money laundering. By the time federal agents stepped in, there was only about $160,000 left in the company's bank account. Hundreds of millions of dollars, and $160,000 was what remained. Delgado didn't stay silent. Out on home confinement, wearing an ankle monitor inside his 11,000-square-foot Isleworth estate, he agreed to speak on camera, the first time, with WFTV investigative reporter Darylene Jones. He told her he'd flown back from Dubai voluntarily. Quote, I had a responsibility to come back, not only to face the charges but also give a full picture of what happened, end quote. He talked about the people who trusted him, retirees, teachers, nurses, firefighters. Quote, they put their trust in me and I failed them. At the end of the day, I failed them, end quote. When Jones asked directly what happened to the money, Delgado said, their money was being used to make distributions to either them or other early investors. He insisted he never set out to build a fraud. Quote, I didn't build Goliath to be a Ponzi scheme. I didn't build Goliath to be a fraud, end quote. Jones didn't let that stand. Her response was blunt. The very definition of what you just described is a Ponzi scheme. On June 30th, 2026, Christopher Delgado pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and money laundering. In his plea agreement, he admitted to causing a minimum of $250 million in losses to investors, out of at least $400 million the government says Goliath ultimately took in. As part of the plea, Delgado agreed to forfeit 8 real properties, 11 vehicles, 30 watches, more than 50 luxury bags and wallets, and at least 29 pieces of high-end jewelry. U.S. Attorney Gregory Kehoe put it plainly, quote, Delgado provided fraudulent information to solicit investor funds and then spent his ill-gotten gains on his extravagant lifestyle, end quote. Delgado now faces up to 20 years in federal prison for each fraud count and up to 10 more for money laundering. His sentencing is scheduled for October 8, 2026. Hundreds of investors put their retirement savings, their pensions, their trust into Goliath Ventures. Many are still waiting to find out if they'll ever see any of it again. And Goliath wasn't an isolated case. In the same month Christopher Delgado was arrested, at least 7 other new Ponzi schemes were uncovered across the United States. Cattle farms, real estate funds, precious metals, artificial intelligence trading bots. Different disguises, same machine. New investors' money, paying off old promises, for as long as the story holds. If this kind of story matters to you, hit subscribe. We're covering the biggest financial crime cases in the country as they unfold. Drop a comment. What's the wildest excuse you've ever heard from a scammer? And share this with someone who needs to hear it before they wire money to a stranger. Sources for this video include the U.S. Department of Justice, IRS Criminal Investigation, The federal criminal complaint in United States versus Christopher Alexander Delgado, and reporting by WFTV Channel 9 Orlando and Yahoo Finance. B-roll via Pexel's contributors. Full source list in the description.